Volunteers help clean up the emergency shelters for quake victims in Kumamoto, Japan. We look back at how Tzu Chi expanded its missions overseas by utilizing local resources.
Welcome to DaAi Headlines. I'm Siri Su. Thank you for joining us. After the recent earthquakes in Kumamoto, Japan, many residents have been placed at emergency shelters. To help with keeping things safe and clean at the shelters, volunteers have been on call since April 22nd. Meanwhile, some families have been sleeping in their cars outside. We'll meet one such family.
It's 9 o'clock on a weekend morning, and residents in Otsu, Kumamoto are just beginning their day. Living out of their cars with only blankets, some clothes, and necessary items, Mr. Higashi and his family of 9 have been living in a parking lot and sleeping in their cars for the past 10 days.
We don't really have a choice because living at home is too dangerous. We had the choice of coming to stay at the relief shelter, so we decided to drive our cars here.
Some of the people in the shelter are sick and the ventilation isn't very good, so we didn't really want to stay inside. The space is also very cramped, with people always moving about. You don't have the sense of freedom that you will have in your own home.
With so many people in the shelter and limited space, residents are concerned about health hazards. Starting on the 22nd, the shelter asked for volunteers to come and assist in keeping the shelter sanitary. In addition to keeping the shelter space clean, one can also witness the respect and compassion that volunteers show for the disaster victims.
Coming here, we face disaster victims, so we need to protect them. In addition, the volunteers work as a team, and this team will make sure regulations are being followed. We will then provide service as a team.
Each day, dozens of volunteers, including many teenagers, show up to do what they can to help at the shelter. A Taiwanese exchange student studying in Tokyo has even made the trip all the way to Kumamoto just to volunteer.
There is one local resident that I know personally here. I was really worried about how he was doing, so I wanted to come here and check up on him. I really aim with all my heart to do everything I can to help this community recover.
Volunteers here are practicing selfless giving to others in their time of need, offering care and companionship to console hearts of disaster victims one by one.
70 years old is an age when most people have retired, but this isn't the case for Mrs. Lin Meixia, who lives in Puli, Taiwan. For the past 20 years, she's been a member of rescue team of the Red Cross Society of ROC, becoming its oldest member. She joined rescue operations in Sichuan, China, Japan, and earlier this year, Tainan's collapsed Wake 1 apartment building. Let's learn more about this brave woman.
Mrs. Lin Meixia is 70 years old, but isn't a typical elderly person. Here we see her showing her professionalism and vigor as she changes into her rescue uniform. She's also a swim coach and has life-saving accreditation. After the 9/21 earthquake, she became involved in rescue work and remained active for 20 years.
Typhoon Herb, Typhoon Mindo, and Sichuan earthquake and Xiaoling village.
Walking into Miss Lin's home, you see that her walls are covered with photos from her disaster relief operations and medals from sports competitions. This is a truly impressive accomplishment.
In February this year, Lin assisted in a rescue operation at Tainan's collapsed Weiguan apartment complex, where she searched through rubble to save a 3-year-old girl.
I just said, let me give you a hug and you're going home.
During the 9/21 earthquake, half of her house collapsed in Puli, giving her first-hand knowledge of the suffering of victims, teaching her empathy.
Going over there was really quite painful, as it was like saving our own loved ones.
After her husband's death, Lin was left alone to raise 6 children. Due to her influence, they have also joined volunteer rescue units.
I also encouraged them to join rescue work. It's my way of thinking.
Lin says that as long as she can walk, she will continue contributing and studying. She wants to rely on her own strength to give something back to the world for as long as she can.
Next, we'll meet a member of Hualien Fire Department's Meilun EMT squad, Mr. Peng Kang Yo. 8 years ago, he worked at a tech company, but after a serious car accident, his life was saved thanks to the help of an EMT. After that experience, he gave up his previous job and decided to train to become an EMT himself.
During the day, it takes us 60 seconds to deploy. In the evenings, it takes 90. Everyone has to be quick because there's no time to wait on anyone. Once we hear the alarm, we have to go as soon as possible. Once our equipment is on, we are out the door.
过程当中会痛会晕或是任何不舒服就停止动作叫出来哈。
For Mr. Peng, after 8 years serving as an EMT, even in the case of a minor accident, he takes no chances. Out of concern for the patients, he follows procedure to make sure that nothing is overlooked.
When we first arrive on the scene, there's a lot of equipment that we carry on us. Because when we get out of the ambulance, we have to assume that moment is the most critical moment. So we have to be prepared for the worst.
Mr. Peng has helped out in more than 50 cases when someone had already lost their pulse. In such cases, despite the family's nervousness and questions, he still gave immediate treatment to try to resuscitate the patient.
We are not saving an individual but a family. Therefore, I insist on doing my best to save the person as long as he still stands a chance to be saved.
Right now, in this practice drill, the EMT squad is testing a patient's blood sugar, which is a key to determining a patient's condition. It might seem small, but every aspect of care is important when safeguarding the lives in their community.
Also in Taiwan, Ms. Wang Sulan has suffered from congenital hip displacement for over 50 years, which means she has one leg shorter than the other, making getting around difficult. To deal with this problem, doctors at Tzu Chi Hospital assisted her with a two-part surgical procedure, which will help her to walk normally.
Living in a mountainous area, it was difficult for Wang Sulan to seek medical treatment for her hip. For most of her life, she dealt with the problem by simply wearing a padded foot insert on one shoe to even the length. However, recently, pain in her hip made it difficult for her to walk at all.
Congenital hip displacement will make one leg longer than the other. Since for her, the difference in length is almost 6 centimeters, which has resulted in a severe pelvic tilt, as well as a crooked spine, which makes it very inconvenient to walk.
The skeletal structure is the primary support for our body weight and also forms a protective casing for important internal organs. The hip joints are especially important for our body's mobility.
Our hip joint is formed with a femoral head that fits into the acetabulum or hip socket. They have to fit together snugly in order to operate and to support weight. In Miss Wang's case, since her hip has been displaced since she was young, her acetabulum isn't properly formed, so her shoulder leg has atrophied, not only the muscle, but the bone as well.
To solve the problem of the unequal length of her legs, the doctors have reconstructed a new femoral head and hip joint for Miss Wang. After relaxing her tendons and applying a strong bone adhesive, she is ready for the hip replacement, and the femoral head is successfully shifted into the proper place. After surgery and rehabilitation, Miss Wang is happy and looking forward to walking freely and getting back to her volunteer work.
There are now over 90,000 certified Tzu Chi volunteers serving in 614 Tzu Chi offices across 56 countries. But only in 1985 did Tzu Chi first establish its first overseas office in Alhambra, California. In today's Tzu Chi's 50th anniversary special report, we look back at how Tzu Chi was able to expand its missions overseas.
Tzu Chi means compassion and relief in Chinese Mandarin.
On May 14, 2013, the U.S. Tzu Chi headquarters was awarded the Member of the Year by the National Voluntary Organizations, in recognition of the contribution made by its volunteers. When the first Tzu Chi office in the U.S. opened in 1985, it was also the first Tzu Chi office overseas.
At the time, we needed a home overseas to carry out Tzu Chi's work abroad, so I made a small vow to Master Zheng Yan. I vowed that within 1 year of joining Tzu Chi, I would buy an office for the Master. Not only are we a charity organization, we are also one big family.
From this small office, Tzu Chi volunteers in the U.S. began cultivating the charity's medical and charity missions in full force.
Here's an example of the earthquake down Cleveland Boulevard. near the.
北岭地震。
When the Northridge quake happened, we quickly went to buy bottles of water and sent them to Northridge. In the supplies was Tzu Chi's volunteers' love.
Taiwan Buddhist Compassion Relief Organization, Tzu Chi Foundation USA, who donated $1,000 to my family on the spot.
Right at landfall is when the worst storm surge.
To help those who have been displaced, as well as.
A year after Katrina, the U.S. Tzu Chi was made a member of national voluntary organizations active in disaster, and was the only Buddhist organization within the group. Since then, Tzu Chi has become known to Americans.
上人说，在美国我们讲。
The master said, since we live and work in the United States, we must become a part of the community.
The same can be said about all Tzu Chi volunteers living in different parts of the world. Wherever they are, they spread the seeds of love locally, just like their U.S. counterparts. In Jordan, the Zaatari refugee camp, established in 2012, is home to over 80,000 refugees from Syria. It can get blistering cold in winter, and so Jordan's Tzu Chi volunteers have been coming here to hand out relief supplies every year. The Tzu Chi Jordan chapter is actually the smallest Tzu Chi chapter overseas. Established in 1997 amidst the conflicts in the region, volunteers first paid the nomadic Bedouin a visit every 2 months by crossing the desert. Relying on one another in a foreign land, despite the limited manpower and religious and cultural divides, Tzu Chi volunteers are determined to help those in need.
海外菩萨回来受证，这都是呢，表示咱祖籍现在啦，已经呢慢慢向着国际布散种子啦，一粒种子啦，成为大树呢，那就开始开花结果，又是种子累累。
Sowing the seeds of goodness and nurturing them with love. There are even Tzu Chi chapters across Africa, which has been plagued by poverty, illness, and illiteracy for the past century.
Master.
Even with the continent's limited resources, Tzu Chi volunteers continue to source what they need locally to hold all sorts of Tzu Chi events. Thanks to their simplicity and devotion, over 90% of their care recipients have subsequently become volunteers. Local Tzu Chi volunteers first arose in South Africa, and they have now traveled thousands of kilometers to spread Tzu Chi's message.
Thanks for the love for Taiwan and Tzu Chi. These bags of rice of love are just like the long-awaited rain arriving in the nick of time. Without my bag of rice, me and my child who's sick will have nothing to eat.
All across the planet, there are blessings to be cultivated. Wherever Tzu Chi volunteers are, they abide by the rule of taking locally and giving locally. To date, over 90,000 certified volunteers clad in their blue and white uniform can be found serving in 614 Tzu Chi offices across 56 countries.
A Tzu Chi volunteer in Qinghai, China, Dong Zhenhua, used to discipline her daughter with corporal punishment, which created a gap between them. After joining in Tzu Chi's volunteer training, Dong has tamed her temper and even brought her daughter along in Tzu Chi activities. Through it all, the mother and daughter pair have reconciled their differences and strengthened family ties.
This mother and daughter pair has waited for 7 years for this hug. Not wanting to spoil her daughter, Dong Zhenhua used to discipline her with a stick underneath the sofa.
Her legs and hip were bruised, especially the area below her hip.
This corporal punishment led to the hostility and gap between the mother and daughter.
It was horrible when she hit me. My father took up the mother's role and vice versa.
Fortunately, they can now talk about this past with laughter and ease.
If the child makes a mistake, be patient with them, like what the master taught us. Don't get mad easily. There is no harm in giving your child your best wishes.
Becoming a certified Tzu Chi volunteer helped Dong transform. During volunteer training, she learned to talk with a nice demeanor and brought her daughter along in Tzu Chi activities. Then the mother and daughter grew closer, and Dong's husband also stopped selling meat dishes, switching to construction work.
We accumulated negative karma through selling and killing fish. After learning of Buddhist principles, I gradually stopped doing my old job.
Taming her temper, Dong has become a loving mother who inspires the entire family to do good deeds. Through the experience, they have also brought warmth and love back to the family.
Also in Qinghai, China, many residents burn coals to warm their houses in harsh winters and burn their trash, polluting the environment. Having learned about the importance of conservation, recycling volunteer Li Xiangling collects recyclables in the community and has even started the first Tzu Chi recycling point in Qinghai.
In Qinghai, Li Xiangling collects recyclables on the streets, riding his electric tricycle. He knows that if he does not recycle them, the items will be burned.
If you do not recycle them, they will be burned. I can sell them for a few renminbi after I bring them back.
Due to the high altitude, Qinghai has cold winters and residents are used to burning coal. In addition, they burn their trash, so the sky always seems hazy. Li, who once overlooked the problem, learned about the importance of conservation after joining Tzu Chi. Since he conducts business at a market, he began to collect cardboard and paper and even invited other shop owners to join his efforts.
We often throw away boxes and plastic bags. It's better to give them to him to be recycled. Helping him is helping ourselves and society at large.
Everyone is responsible for protecting Mother Earth.
In addition, he also takes on other responsibilities.
Something came up at the Tzu Chi office. They called to ask me to go over there.
Whether it is recycling or home visitations, if you call and invite him, he says, "No problem, I'll come over." He always says, okay.
Keen on helping people in need, Li is an important Tzu Chi recruit, carrying out Tzu Chi's missions in Qinghai. His 76-year-old father once worried for him, but is now proud of the son.
It is all right that his clothes get dirty in doing recycling. It's fine to get filthy physically, as long as our minds are not tainted. Listening to Master Zheng Yan, he is dedicated to doing recycling. I fully support him.
7 years ago, volunteers of Pinghe community in Zhanghua County's Dachun Township jointly founded a plant and tree bank named the Secret Garden of Trees and Flowers. It's actually a 6,600 square meter space with more than 10,000 trees and abundant wildlife and vegetation. Recently, it began generating solar power, supplying some 2/3 of the power to this ecological park.
Today, the weather is cooperating, providing a little bit of light rain, so we don't need to provide any water. This is actually the best weather for planting trees.
This spring rain is well suited for planting trees. These volunteers are all working at this tree bank, not just planting seedlings, but hope for the future.
You can't just plant trees. There are 3 important rules. You must select the right variety of tree, the right location, and the right way to nourish it.
Emperor moth larvae like to eat the leaves of this umbrella tree, also known as Schefflera. This is the reason why this particular tree is so abundant here, as each tree serves a purpose. Initially, this tree bank covered some 6,600 square meters in space, supporting some 5,000 trees. In the past 7 years, the trees have doubled in number, greatly contributing to carbon reduction. Tree planting is just the first step in reducing carbon emissions. A few months ago, 6 solar panels were installed on the old water tower with help from Zhengzhou University of Science and Technology and volunteer electricians. Generating 1,100 watts of power each hour, they supply more than 70% of the electricity needed by this park, cutting the monthly electricity bill from $90 to $30. Furthermore, this wasn't a government-backed program, but residents paying for this green power. Former leader of Dachun Township Heping Community, Guo Junyin, was the inspiration behind the garden, creating attractive flowers and grass, as well as shade of a forest. Aside from the sun, this area is also blessed with water resources.
This was an abandoned hillside that has now been turned into the Secret Garden in Dachun Township, relying on the hard work of community volunteers, which made full use of the slope of the terrain to pipe in spring water without an electric motor to create this natural ecological pool.
People like to say that catching clams and washing plants at the same time. In this ditch, you can see lots of clams, and here's a baby clam.
It's a small place, but they have a lot of ideas. For example, we discovered they did a lot of landscaping, taking their inspiration from natural elements.
With the recognition from the public, these community volunteers are even more inspired to undertake environmental projects and show their love for the earth.
In Zhanghua's Yuanling, a family of 3 suffers from chronic illness, leading their home to fall into disrepair for more than a decade. After being notified, city volunteers recruited 40 people to help the family clean up their house.
These recyclables are stacked inside the house, leaving no place to walk. The cabinets are rotten, and when open, cockroaches scurry about. This toilet is being scrubbed with a brush, and these countless numbers of plastic bags all need to be examined.
We're checking each bag because we fear that they may have put money or other important items inside, so we have to open each bag.
Volunteers work carefully to ensure they don't discard money that has been stashed away and forgotten. This family of 3 in Zhanghua County's Yuanling suffer from chronic illness and haven't cleaned their home in more than a decade. Tzu Chi mobilized 40 volunteers with the necessary cleaning tools to help.
I want to make her home a clean environment and allow her to live more comfortably.
It has been raining for the past few days, and today we've had such good weather. This is a good sign, as even God seems to be helping out.
The daughter of this family is full of gratitude for their work, as she hasn't seen her home so clean in a very long time.
Mom has been here for more than a decade and has stubbornly prevented us from cleaning up. We had no way to do it, so we really appreciate your efforts to give my mom this clean living space.
The morning of cleaning garbage and sorting recyclables has led these volunteers to feel exhausted, though pleased in the contribution they made to this family.
In the United States, city volunteers in California have been providing free breakfast to students of Campbell Middle School in Campbell City once every week. This year, the volunteers have also been invited to a school event. We'll leave you with these images. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.